The Pack was on a bye. The Lions made the Vikings cry. Kyler tore his ACL. Debo hurt his ankle. And the Rams needed the goods that Baker did supply. Welcome to the Mish. All right, everybody, welcome to the Week 15 episode of the Mishpo. We have concluded the regular season, and we are here in the playoffs now. Week 1 of the playoffs. Obviously, some of the matchups last week didn't really mean much, but some of them had some pretty big implications on the playoffs. So, as you probably can tell, I'm here in my garage. No bookshelves or anything, but I wanted to mix up a couple locations. I was like, hey Bree, I need like two more locations to film the Mishpo in. And she's like, why don't you go in the garage? I'm like, it's cold in the garage. She's like, I don't care, freeze. And so I'm out here in the garage. I kind of hope she doesn't come home because she'll be like pulling up right behind me. And in fact, just to be safe, I will, because I do have this door open here to the house. And so if Bree were to come home, the dogs could get loose, and we would not want that, obviously. So, before we jump into this week's matchups, we got ourselves a brewski. It's a toasted Bork Leinenkugels, a refreshing take on a traditional Bork beer. I don't know what Bork is, but it is intriguing, and so I thought I'd give it a try. And it's like an amber color, you could say. It definitely seems like a heavier type beer, which I don't mind. You can't drink too many of them, but one or two is fine. And this is just one, so I'm in that zone of it being fine. So, yeah, it's like an amber, kind of. It probably says it on the back here, but maybe look into it a bit more. But for now, we're just going to start off with last week's matchups. First up, it was me versus Colin. This one was not that close. 30-ish points separated the winner from the loser. And there were a number of injuries that occurred during this matchup. Both of our starting quarterbacks got knocked out of the game, mine being Tyler Huntley, and then, of course, Kyler Murray over on Colin's side, which is pretty, that's a bummer for him. Torn ACL, done for the year, and could affect next year too. But my team was led by my tight ends, David Njoku, who's the number 2 tight end on the week, and just at 18.7, and just 0.2 points behind him was I keep calling him Chiggy, but it's a Chigozime Unconkul. He did pretty good, and I just picked him up off waivers. He had 18 and a half, so very good stuff from him. Definitely will be playing him if Traylon Burks is out, who I also have, but if Traylon is in, then I'll maybe play them both, because they're both very solid young players. I believe they're both rookies, so that's pretty cool. Good for them. Anyway, the rest of the performances were meh. DJ Chark did have a solid game over on Colin's side with 21.4. And my duo of Los Angeles Rams receivers, very solid stuff. 12.4 from Van Jefferson and 15.9 from Ben Skoranek, who I dubbed the Cooper Kupp 2.0 now that Cooper Kupp's out. And, he had 7 receptions for 89 yards, so not too bad. We'll see if that keeps going from him. But yeah, I ended up getting the victory 100.82 to Colin's 67.66, and this matchup meant nothing in terms of playoffs. Both of us were out of the race, I believe. Well, maybe Colin could have made it in if other things went differently. But that one had no real impact. This next one, though, had somewhat of an impact. It was Lincoln versus T-Corn. T-Corn going into this matchup was 6-7, so if he would have won, he didn't, spoiler alert, then he could have had a chance to make the playoffs, but he lost in what is likely the biggest blowout of the week. Just Justin Herbert did all right with 18.48, but then Jamal Williams and Saquon Barkley, who's really been carrying your team lately, and you can throw CeeDee Lamb in that as well. The highest points for any of those three, it was CeeDee at 8.3, so not great. Amari Cooper had 6.2. Hunter Henry led, second most points on the team with 10 points from him. But kind of a down week for T-Corn, so a bit of a disappointing way to end the regular season for you. Lincoln had a much different story. 29.3 from Christian McCaffrey. I'm sure he'll be getting a lot more work in the weeks to come with Debo now out for a week or three, I've heard up to 3 weeks now. Garrett Wilson, not too bad, 13.8, 33.3 from Jerry Jeudy, so good stuff from him, and 20.75 from the Chiefs' defense over on Lincoln's side as well. In the end, Lincoln got the victory, 131.71 to T-Corn's 68.63. Both teams finished at 6 and 8 for the season, so if Lincoln would have won, there was a chance that he made the playoffs. It all comes down to the scores. Which will bring us on to Fiala versus Michael. This one did also have, you could argue this one, and then the one other matchup had the biggest playoff implications this past week. Again, bad performances from guys that you expect to have good performances. You can, for Michael's side, lump Brady, who had 12.12, Dalvin Cook, 7.6, Ramondre, he did get hurt, but he only had 3 points, and Amon-Ra, 13.4, not too great from him. Some other subpar performances. Devin Singletary, 5.3, and Kareem Hunt had 3.2. The Patriots defense had 23.5, so that's pretty good for Michael. That's like a fourth of his points. And then over on Fiala's side, it was a bit of a different story. There were still some stinkers, like Travis Etienne only had 3.2. Not really sure what's going on with him. And Gerald Everett, 7.8, hoping maybe for a little bit more from him, but with Mike Evans and Keenan Allen back in the lineup, that's pretty all right. But the rest of the scoring from Fiala was pretty solid. I'll just name a few. Josh Allen, 20.58. Probably actually wanted a bit more from him. But Devonta Smith, 17.4, pretty solid. D-Hop, 11.9. Will be without Kyler going forward. DK had 18.1. Keenan Allen, aforementioned, 21.2 points from him, so very solid stuff. Fiala got the victory, 116.73 to Michael's 86.72. And that victory, compiled with a further future matchup, is what got Fiala into the playoffs as the number 6 seed. And we'll just jump around here to that matchup, Adam versus Abby. For Adam, this matchup didn't really matter all that much, maybe for seeding, but obviously he was a lock for the playoffs. Joe Burrow, 17.7 or 5.6 for Adams, 19.4 from Josh Jacobs, very good stuff. 12.6 from Joe Mixon, AJ Brown, 17 points, 10.4 from Chris Godwin. Probably, honestly, wanted a bit more from him, but Pat Freiermuth did pretty solid, 12.3, and 12.25 from the 49ers defense. And then over on Abby's side is where things kind of fell apart. Derek Carr, 4.58 points. Pretty disappointing. Blake Boone, who is now on IR, 4.6. George Pickens, not too bad, 10.8. But then Deebo Samuel, 13.4. And now he's out for like 3 weeks. So basically done for fantasy. And, definitely would like him going into the toilet bowl, which Abby is now in. She was in the playoffs at the start of this week, and because she lost, she is now out of them. So that's a very unfortunate situation for her. TJ Hawkinson had 10.7, and, just some subpar. She did have a few buys, so she had 5 players on bye. Not saying she would have started all of them. Definitely would have started Aaron Jones, maybe Cordero, and maybe A.J. Dillon, but that kind of sucks. So the final score for this one was Adam won 117.71 to Abby's 66.58. 8. And we'll jump back up to Sam versus Derek. This one could have had did have playoff implications if Sam would have won. Or actually, no. I think Sam made the playoffs. Let's see. Yeah, Sam did make the playoffs. Congratulations, Sam. Made it a bit scary because, if you would have won, you sure would have been in, but you did, spoiler alert, lose, but, you still made the playoffs, so it's all good there. So 25 from Kirk Cousins, so pretty solid. 23.4 from James Conner, so pretty solid, and this is for Derek's team. 15.8 from Isaiah Hodgins. Yeah. And the Philadelphia Eagles defense, 17.75. Another bird defense, the Baltimore Ravens, 12.5 points for Sam, 0 points from Tyler Boyd, who was injured. And also T. Higgins played 1 snap, and he also got 0 points. So that is a big bum for you. Hopefully they can get back and healthy for your matchup and don't pull those kinds of shenanigans in the playoffs. But you're in, so that's good. Adam Thielen, though, had 19.5, and Travis Kelce, 11.1. Probably wanted a bit more from him. Zeke is looking really good lately. 17.1 from him. And in the end, Derek got the victory, 105.05 to Sam's 88.3, which will bring us on to Caleb versus State Farm, the highest scoring matchup. Nothing really playoff implication here. Caleb was already out for sure, and State Farm was already in for sure. So it was just kind of a little funsy matchup. Patrick Mahomes and Jared Goff, the quarterbacks in this matchup, both did pretty solid. Patrick Mahomes doing 22.78 points, and Jared Goff 26.1. Austin Eckler, over on State Farm's side, had 24.4 and 28.5 for Miles Sanders. A pretty solid outing for your running backs there, about 50 points between the two of them. Tyler Lockett had 17 over for Caleb. And Evan Ingram, the tight end, won on the week. And I believe, with how bad these tight ends have been this season, he's the number 5 tight end on the season. I guess I could click on it, but he had 39.2 points. Yes, the number 4 tight end in PPR, 5 in standard. So pretty good stuff from him. And Jamar Chase, with the other 2 receivers out of the game, had 28.5 points. So he is officially back. And the defenses in this matchup did pretty solid as well. And they went up against each other. How fun is that? The Buffalo Bills defense over there for State Farm had 15.25. And for Caleb, the New York Jets had 14. So very solid stuff. In the end, Caleb got the victory here. 158.4 to State Farm's 136.83, which will bring us on to the final matchup of last week, which happens to also be the 2 teams that are on, well, not the 2 teams that are on bye, but one of the teams on bye this week, and another very solid playoff team in Bruce and Brian. I believe if the matchup would have gone the other way, spoiler alert, Bruce did win. It would have come down to points to see who would have been the number 1 seed there. Well, maybe not. I don't know what's going on, but regardless, there's a 2-game difference. But I guess if Bruce would have lost, he would have been 12-3. And if Brian would have won, he'd been 11-4. So I don't know what I'm talking about. But it's all right, because this was a pretty fun matchup. Decent scores both sides. Ryan Tannehill, 17.76. Good old America boy right there. Derrick Henry, 18.5. 33.3 from Jay Jetta, Justin Jefferson. 18.9 from Chuba Hubbard. And a pretty solid defensive outing from the Denver Broncos. 7.25. The Titans defense could not be the same said. It is negative half a point from them. However, Zay Jones had 21.7. Devontae only 10.1, so not great for him. But Tyreek Hill 24.1 with that crazy touchdown off that fumble. I'm not sure if anyone saw that, but it was a pretty crazy touchdown. Tony Pollard had 22.2, and Jalen Hurts had 30.38. So no big deal. Bruce got the victory, of course. 130.48 to Brian's 111.31. Before we jump into the power rankings, I will quickly take a quickie sippy on my juice and we will jump into the Week 1 matchup for the playoffs. That's pretty good stuff. Got my napkin, because I do get messy sometimes. Alrighty. Power rankings, starting at 14. And again, not too much of a shakeup. The middle is a bit different, but the top and the bottom are about the same. Colin at 14, myself 14, Derek 12, Lincoln 11, Caleb 10, Abby 9, Fiala 8, T-Corn 7, Michael 6, Sam 5, State Farm 4, Brian 3, Adam 2, and number 1 is Bruce. And Bruce and State Farm will be on bye this week, so congratulations to you two. I remember that was me last year, and now I'm at the bottom. So isn't that just fun? But yeah, so there will be only 6 matchups this week. Isn't that fun? And the first one is Abby versus myself, the one who was always going to be in the Sacko race, and then one that was just joined in right at the last minute. So, as I mentioned previously, Abby does have some injuries she's going to have to combat with. Micah Boone is injured and currently in your lineup, and as well as Devo Samuel. But as I mentioned, also you do have some guys that were on buys that I'm sure you will fill in, especially Aaron Jones and maybe Sammy Watkins. You'll probably just take one of your guys out of your flex and throw them in, like A.J. Dillon or something. Cordell Patterson, we'll see. But you're going to have to make a few moves here, and I do as well. I currently have too many players, but I'm going to be expecting some of them, at least 1 or 2, to get listed as out, so I can throw them on my IR, and I won't have to drop anyone. Obviously, I will if I have to, but obviously these 2 teams aren't very good. Mine is the absolute worst, and Abby's is just like the best of the worst teams. Despite all that, a lot of things have changed in the last week where Abby lost her best player, and I may have lost my best player. Well, not best, but Damian Pierce is hurt and will probably not play, but I did get some other solid players, and they're playing well. Long story short, I will be picking myself, and I'm just going to get this Joey as Sacko thing out of the way right away and make it so that I cannot be Sacko. So, next up, we've got Sam versus Brian, one of the actual playoff matchups. Quarterbacks are decent, Tua and Tannehill. Obviously, I'd probably rather have Tua. He has been a bit down lately in terms of his performance, but, it's playoffs time, baby. I'm sure he's going to pick it up. Over on Sam, obviously, we've got Najee Harris and Zeke. Zeke's been playing really well lately. We'll see if that can continue. As I mentioned earlier, the injured receivers from Cincinnati in T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. We'll see if those 2 can go at it. Obviously, that would make a big difference on this matchup, as you'd have to fill in 2 wide receiver positions. Obviously, Travis Kelce will probably be pretty good. We'll see if Corey Davis can play, because he's also dealing with a bit of injury. But if he does play, he should be pretty good as they go up against Detroit, who is not very good in terms of their defense. And then over on Brian's side, we've got Derrick Henry, who I'm sure is just going to run like crazy. Justin Jefferson, I'm sure, is just going to run like crazy. And some other decent players. I do think this will be a close matchup. And I do think Sam will come out on top of it. So, the other playoff matchup, because there's the 6 teams in the playoffs, and 2 of them are on bye, so that means there's only 2 playoff matchups. Love that math there. It is Adam versus Fiala. So this one, some very solid quarterbacks in Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, and then some decent running backs. Obviously, we've been talking about Adam's running backs all year, Josh Jacobs and Joe Mixon. Mixon does face Tampa Bay, which is a tough defense, and Jacobs does face New England, which is a tough defense. So it could be a bit of a challenge there for those 2. Travis Etienne does also face a tough defense in Dallas, but then Pacheco, Fiala's other running back, goes up against Houston, who is not a good defense, especially against the run. Obviously, some very solid receivers as well. Chris Godwin, A.J. Brown, Alan Lazard and Curtis Samuel over there for Adam, and Devonta Smith. So we've got both of the Philadelphia Eagles receivers, DeAndre Hopkins and DK Metcalf and Keenan Allen. So it's a very, very solid receiver room for this matchup. These two teams are pretty solid. Tight ends Gerald Everett and Pat Freiermuth are nothing to shake your finger at. And the San Francisco 49ers and Pittsburgh Steelers defenses are pretty solid as well. So I'd expect it to be a fairly high-scoring game. And I will be picking Adam here. I think Papa's just going to keep on winning, and that's just how this thing is going to go, I think. So moving on to Derek versus Lincoln, one of the toilet bowl matchups for the Sacko. Kirk Cousins over on Derek's side, and Dak Prescott for Lincoln. Pretty evenly matched quarterbacks. Don't really know for sure who I'd want. Probably Dak. But Derek, I think maybe, Lincoln has Christian McCaffrey. I was going to say Derek might have the slight edge in running back with James Conner and Zonovan Knight, especially with Kyler being out, but Christian McCaffrey he's Christian McCaffrey. So, and there's also Latavius Murray over there, so we'll see how well he can do. But should expect some pretty solid things from multiple of those running backs in this matchup. Garrett Wilson, I'm sure, is going to eat Jerry Jeudy. If Cortland Sutton is out again, it will probably eat Steph Diggs and Michael Gallup over on Derek's side. Maybe we'll eat. Probably. I'm sure they're hungry little boys looking for a gobble. Couple good tight ends, Conklin and Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews has been playing a bit not as well as you would have hoped for him the last couple weeks. But we'll see if he can get it turned around for the playoffs, because after all, it is the playoffs. You'd expect him to perform a bit better. They don't care. Devonta Foreman and Jeff Wilson round out Lincoln's flex, as well as the Kansas City Chiefs defense, who I expect to be very good against the Houston Texans. Philadelphia Eagles get the Philadelphia Eagles defense over for Derek gets Chicago, and I expect them to do pretty solid as well. And then the flex is Isaiah Hodgins, who we'll see how he does. He had a pretty solid week last week, is kind of like the last man standing. And then Romeo Dobbs, we'll see if he can play this week. He's trying to, and he does get until Monday. But that could be a tricky situation if he doesn't play, and you're kind of scrambling to find someone to play on Monday. So I do think Lincoln will win this matchup, and I honestly don't think it will be all that close, but anything can happen. It's fantasy. Moving on to the penultimate matchup of the week, Michael versus Colin. Over on Michael's side, we've got Dalvin Cook as his running backs, and also Ramondre Stevenson, currently questionable. We'll see if he plays. Of course, Tom Brady is his quarterback. He does have Lamar also on his bench, so we'll see if he can play. But you do have two decent starting options for you there. We'll just run through Michael's team real quick. Some very solid receivers in the receiver position. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Brandon Ayuk. Very solid stuff. And then some decent running backs who have not been performing probably up to what you want in your flex spots. Devin Singletary and Kareem Hunt. And then Danny Bellinger in your tight end spot. And then, of course, the Patriots defense, who I'm sure will absolutely destroy Las Vegas. Over on Colin's side, we've got Deshaun Watson. You did have Kyler, obviously, but he's out for the season. You also do have Kenny Pickett on your bench. We'll see if he gets to start. Probably not, but we'll see. Jonathan Taylor, obviously very good. Michael Carter, pretty solid. Might be the number 2 behind Zonovan now. Hollywood Brown going to have to be getting passes from Colt McCoy. So see how well that does for him. And then Michael Pittman has not been what we wanted, but he's still obviously a very talented receiver. George Kittle, I'm sure, will benefit from Debo missing. And then Kendall Hinton and Donovan Peoples-Jones are your flex players. Again, I do like Peoples-Jones a bit more than Hinton. Hinton is more of a necessity with what's his face being out, Cortland Sutton. So we'll see if Cortland can get back. If not, Kendall Hinton should be all right against Arizona, who it's all right, not really. And then the Cincinnati Bengals defense. They have been pretty solid, but they and they are facing a struggling Tampa Bay team, so I do expect them to probably be all right. In this matchup, in Michael versus Colin, I will be picking Michael, and I don't think it will be that close, which will bring us on to the final matchup of the week, Caleb versus T-Corn. Solid quarterbacks, Justin Herbert, Jared Goff, couple blue boys, because they're both wearing blue. Isn't that just funny? And then over on T-Corn side is Caleb's quarterback's running back in Jamal Williams, also Saquon Barkley over there, and CD Lamb, Amari Cooper. The receivers, Hunter Henry at tight end, James Cook. I don't know why I thought that was wrong, but it's James Cook in the Seattle defense against San Francisco. Not sure how well that'll turn out. Hopefully it does bad things, as we want San Francisco to win for the Packers' playoff hopes. But some pretty solid players over there, and but Caleb does have a pretty solid team as well. Mentioned Jared Goff, but also David Montgomery and Alvin Kamara, pretty solid. Tyler Lockett and Deontay Johnson are both pretty solid. Tyler has been scoring touchdowns in the last month and a half ish, so that's pretty good stuff from him. And then Evan Ingram, the tight end, and of course Jamar Chase and Mike Williams in the flex. So I'm sure those two will have a good game again. And then the Jets defense against the Lions, which should be a pretty decent matchup. This one was a pretty tough one, but I do think T-Corn is going to win. But I think it's going to be very, very, very close. Probably the closest matchup of the week if I had to bet. I'm going to guess it's going to be within 10 points of each other. So that is the matchups. I'm going to take a quick sip, and then we'll get the show ended. How about that? Oh, almost forgot the time check. I'm recording a bit later. I had to be in the office today, so I couldn't tippy-tappy on the docs and everything during work. But it is currently 4:29, so still not that bad. And it is kind of cold in the garage, so I'm going to wrap this up soon, I'm sure. But yeah, and as I mentioned, Bruce and State Farm are on bye, so enjoy the bye, you two. Good luck to everybody except for Abby. And with that, thank you, and thank you. Alrighty, this flip will be going to my opponent this week in the hopes that this somehow makes if I land it, gets me an advantage. So we're going to go with Abby. So close. I really got to land one of these, so bye-bye!